Hello everybody, Razorblade Mango here, and it's that time of the year, time for the cream of the crop 2020 edition, the first cream of the crop of the new decade, and 2020 was a nightmare, but it was a shockingly good year for games. Usually, and I'll be honest, I struggle to narrow it down to 5 games and 1 honorable mention for this list each year. Some years I've made exceptions, like last year where we had, I think, 9, but other years I've really struggled to narrow the list down because I think there are only a small handful of games each year I consider to be truly great. I'm not one of these boring game critics or influencers that give out 9s and 10s like candy. I've got some standards, goddammit. But 2020 has been a very surprising and delightful exception. I had no problem coming up with 5 games I considered great for 2020. This year was so good that even games I really enjoyed like Final Fantasy VII Remake, Hades, Demon's Souls, Doom Eternal, and some others won't be here. However, if you've been keeping up with the channel this year, almost all the picks won't be that surprising. So, let's kick things off with the honorable mention, Persona 5 Royal. I'm gonna keep this one short and simple. Persona 5 Royal is one of my top 10 games of all time. At the beginning of the year, I said Persona 5 was going to be the honorable mention. I hadn't even played the game yet, and I knew that was going to be the case. I knew Persona 5 Royal was going to be such a powerhouse work of genius that it simply wasn't fair to the other more new games that were going to release in 2020. Vanilla Persona 5 is retroactively my game of the year from 2017. Sorry, what remains of Edith Finch. I still love you, though. And out of all the games to come out in 2020, Persona 5 was guaranteed to be the best. And it was. Easily. Hands down. It's the greatest JRPG I've ever played. Atlus took a game that was already a masterpiece and improved it even further with tons of new story content, excellent quality of life features, new music, and a fantastic yet easily missable extra finale that adds even more emotional weight to the concept of changing hearts and the ideology of the Phantom Thieves. If you haven't played Persona 5 yet, Royal is the way to go. It's a must-play for anyone who even has the mildest of interest in the art of video games. And, even if you've already sunk 100+ hours into OG Persona 5, play Royal! It's in the running for my personal pick for Game of the Generation, alongside The Witcher 3 and Titanfall 2. I deeply adore Persona 5 Royal, and I have no idea how Atlus is going to top this one. Truly, one of the all-time greats. The first of the 5 cream of the crop picks is Ghost of Tsushima. While Ubisoft ignored requests for their tired, boring Assassin's Creed franchise to make its long overdue trip to Japan, Sucker Punch was working away on an open-world samurai epic that would easily blow away most of the greedy, buggy garbage that Ubisoft shovels in our face year after year. Even without trying to make the game look better by comparing it to those fucks at Ubisoft, Ghost of Tsushima is a banger of an open world game. Open world is a genre that I'm absolutely sick of these days. I'm in my late 20s who prefers shorter but deeper games, which means I'm pretty much an old man and a relic from the viewpoint of most of these AAA companies. But even as a relic, I enjoyed Ghost of Tsushima. I enjoyed it a lot. What makes Ghost of Tsushima a far cut above the rest are its near flawless presentation, addictive gameplay, and the lack of horrible monetization practices. This is maybe the most beautiful game I've ever played. It doesn't have the fancy graphics and demanding ray tracing that a Cyberpunk 2077 has, but its stunning scenery, usage of color, and weather effects form together to create images of beauty that are so striking and plentiful that they put almost every other pretty game to shame. Ghost of Tsushima redefines what it means to be a gorgeous video game. But it doesn't just look beautiful, it plays beautifully too. Granted, it's not the most innovative or deep open world game I've ever played, but the minute-to-minute gameplay is fast, fluid, responsive, and feels really satisfying to pull off. Tsushima does a really great job of making you look and feel like the most badass motherfucker in all of Japan. Even though it has all the usual trappings of the genre like bandit camps, scalable vantage points, collectibles, random citizens you can rescue, and more, only in rare cases did it ever feel exhausting or grindy. I'm not against the usual open world bullshit if it's implemented correctly, and I think Ghost of Tsushima is one of the best examples of how it should be done. Even after all that, what elevates Ghost of Tsushima even higher to where it deserves a spot here is its lack of usual publisher garbage. Sony has mostly done a good job these last few generations with keeping a lot of monetization and live service crap out of their single player games. But what had me worried was that free multiplayer Legends mode that released a few months back. When I first heard about it, I imagined the absolute worst case scenario. An intolerable grindfest that locked away all of its best cosmetics behind a rotating item shop, ridiculous prices, and a reward system so unbearably monotonous and unrewarding that it would really tempt people to fork over extra real-life cash for the stuff they actually wanted. But, to my great shock, that never happened. Legends mode launched with no microtransactions to speak of whatsoever, and, at the time of recording this, it still doesn't. To take it a step further, Legends is a really good multiplayer mode. It had no right being this good as a post-launch multiplayer mode added to an exclusively single-player game. So, overall, Ghost of Tsushima is a terrific game. It has a lot of bang for your buck, and it sits alongside the very best Sony had to offer during the PS4 generation. Sucker Punch deserve a round of applause for this one. I knew Astros Playroom was going to be good, but I never expected it to be this good. Packaged with the brand spanking new PlayStation 5 as a free game to showcase the features of the system and, dare I say it, innovative new DualSense controller, Astros Playroom is a pure delight from beginning to end. It works both as a simple but tightly designed and polished platformer and a glorious tribute to PlayStation and its history. Astros Playroom is a very smartly designed platformer. It is efficiently paced, provides a consistent stream of pleasures, both big and small, and the sensory feedback provided to the player thanks to this DualSense controller just feels so damn cool. The simple act of mundane stuff like walking through a field of grass, diving into water, or skating on ice are their own reward in Astros Playroom. I hate to sound hyperbolic, but the sensory stuff in this game is some truly next level shit. It's just one of those things that has to be experienced personally, because my words are going to do no justice to the brilliant work of the tech wizards at Sony and Asobi team. Even if you were to turn off all the controller gimmicks, this game is still great. The basic platforming gameplay feels tight and super responsive, all the levels are just the right length, and the amount of gameplay and scenic variety for this short, free game is seriously impressive. It's a game I wanted to start all over again once I 100% completed it. I wanted to collect everything and find all the PlayStation references that are stuffed into this thing. And speaking of that, there are tons of them. Astros Playroom pulls out all the stops when it comes to paying tribute to PlayStation's history, its iconography, and the first and third-party franchises that made the brand what it is today. On your journey, you'll spot references to games like Silent Hill 2, Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil, Crash Bandicoot, The Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Bloodborne, Infamous, Sly Cooper, and bunch more. It's also lovingly crafted and presented that it never failed to make me smile. I normally frown upon easy nostalgia, but it worked so well for me here that I couldn't complain. As someone who grew up during the heydays of the PS1 and PS2 eras, Astros Playroom extracted a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings out of me. Sony and Asobi team knocked it out of the park when it came to delivering the very first true PS5 exclusive. I bought a PS5 just to play Demon's Souls Remake at launch. However, as damn good as Demon's Souls Remake is, Astros Playroom turned out to be the real MVP of the PS5's launch lineup. I feel really sorry for anyone who couldn't get a PS5 this holiday season, because they missed out on enjoying one of the very best platformers I've ever had the pleasure of playing. Every year when I write the script for this video, there's always one game that gives me crazy writer's block. This year, that honor belongs to The Last of Us Part 2. It's not difficult to write about because I feel compelled to address the elephants in the room that are its extremely divisive reception and very questionable marketing tactics. It's difficult to write about because even 7 months after completing it for the first time, I still have some trouble understanding why the game made me feel the way it did. After pondering it for a long time, I've come to understand most of my initial and further reactions to The Last of Us Part 2, but there is still that small element of my feelings I don't have the words to articulate. I realize the very awkward position I'm putting myself in by having my answer to the question, "Why did The Last of Us Part 2 impact you so much?" be incomplete? But that's the truth. So you'll have to forgive me if this section seems a little more rambly than the rest. However, I don't apologize for the great love and respect I have for what has basically become the Last Jedi of video games. I'm proud to say that I love The Last of Us Part 2, and will defend the vast majority of the creative decisions it made, because I think the narrative Naughty Dog was trying to tell ended up being one of the most engaging and ambitious things I've ever played through in a video game. The moment it started, I was on board for the wild, emotionally exhausting ride Naughty Dog wanted to take me on, and I never wanted to get off. If I didn't have real-life shit to deal with, like work, school, and going to sleep at a reasonable hour, I could have seen myself finishing this massive game in one sitting. I quite literally did not want to step away from this game until I saw it through to its conclusion. In my opinion, Naughty Dog have created one of the great tragedies of video games. This is an incredibly violent, ugly, and bleak game that tosses you into the deep end of witnessing and inflicting great pain and suffering onto others, and it very rarely lets you avert your eyes to the consequences. While I don't think its exploration of things like revenge and violence begets violence is anything profound or deep, I think it still manages to weave one hell of a story out of its multiple plot threads. Naughty Dog had some serious balls telling the story. Despite what a lot of people may think, they aren't stupid. They had to have known this game was going to outrage and alienate a lot of people who fell in love with the first game. Decisions like brutally killing off Joel at the beginning and asking the player to sympathize with his murderer were guaranteed to be controversial. And yet, Naughty Dog took a gamble, and I think it paid off. I respect Naughty Dog a lot for shattering the collective fan base's ideal sequel to The Last of Us and rearranging the broken pieces into a powerful story about loss, grief, violence, regret, hatred, and forgiveness. As someone who for many years said they didn't want a sequel to The Last of Us, I can happily admit that Naughty Dog proved me wrong. They made something I didn't know I wanted. They created what I think is their crowning achievement, and it should be an inspiration to future storytellers of the narrative possibilities of this art form. So, there you go. I fucking love The Last of Us Part 2. Me hopping aboard the latest cultural phenomenon is about as rare as me praising an Ubisoft game. It just doesn't happen most of the time. Before Animal Crossing New Horizons became the worldwide juggernaut that it is, I was excited for it mainly out of my desire for more chill games to play, and the fact that I finally owned a Nintendo home console that the latest in the series would be on. I've tried all the previous Animal Crossings in passing over the years, but this was going to be the first time I would properly attempt to really sink my teeth into one. Little did I know how special this game would end up being to the world, and more importantly, to me. I rarely ever talk about my personal shit on this channel because I like to keep my public and private stuff separate. However, to understand why I love Animal Crossing New Horizons so much, I feel like some context is needed. A few weeks before this game came out, the beginning of the lockdown started. Seeing the world basically shut down and being cut off from many of my loved ones were things I had never experienced before in my lifetime. It just straight up sucked. To make it even worse, I went through a breakup literally a few days before the shutdown started, and therefore a large chunk of my usual avenues of healing and distraction were forcibly taken from me. I can honestly say that early March to late May of last year were some of the darkest hours of my life. It was maybe the first time in my adult life I ever felt truly alone and hopeless. Thankfully, during that time, Animal Crossing New Horizons came out. I was honestly a little hesitant about playing it because it was something my ex and I had talked about playing together, but I bought it anyway and tried it out. From the moment my neighbor Cherry told me that although we had just met, it felt like we had been best friends for ages, I was hooked. From that point on, I fell in love with New Horizons' uplifting, quiet, relaxing, positive, and charming vibes. As the months have gone by, I've made a daily habit out of hopping onto the game and visiting my island and its neighbors. I love walking around my town, giving my favorite neighbors presents, going fishing, doing the latest seasonal activity, and just doing whatever strikes my fancy at the time. There are plenty of games I love more than Animal Crossing New Horizons, but there are very, very few that have had the same impact on me. This game found me when I was in a mental black pit that felt inescapable. It offered me its hand and pulled me out of that pit. It gave me reasons to wake up in the morning and engage with the world. It made me feel happy and good about myself. It gave me a sense of community and friendship when I couldn't physically see my real life friends. In a way, Animal Crossing New Horizons saved my life. And I'm not the only one who feels this way. On a worldwide scale, this was the right game at the right time. Unlike a lot of stuff that comes out these days, I think Animal Crossing New Horizons deserves its status as a cultural phenomenon for helping the world cope with and heal from a literal pandemic. It's a once-in-a-generation kind of game. And even after almost a year later, Cherry is still on my island, and I haven't forgotten the kindness this non-sentient block of pixels showed me when I first started playing. Now, Animal Crossing New Horizons was going to be my game of the year. But before 2020 ended, I finished one of my most highly anticipated games of the year, and it blew me the fuck away. Yakuza VII is a masterpiece. Game of the year. Holy shit. I said in my Yakuza 7 hype video that it looked like a game that was tailor-made for me. And that's exactly what it ended up being, and then some. It succeeded even the high expectations I had for it. I've been hooked on this series since I first played the excellent Yakuza 0 back in 2017, and the fine folks at RGG Studio haven't let me down yet. Yakuza 7 feels like the game this entire series has been building up to. All of the series' lovable tropes are present and accounted for. The ass-kicking heroes, the despicable villains you want to beat the crap out of, the epic story with its surprising twists and turns, the eye-watering amount of deep side activities, and, of course, the amazing side stories that range from real tearjerkers to hilarious lunacy. This is maybe a series peak when it comes to how many compelling side stories they can fit into one game. I dare not spoil all of them, but some of my favorites included a genuinely sweet love story between a dominatrix and a masochist, a hilarious battle against a mischievous chimpanzee, and a heartbreaking little story involving an admirer from Ichiban's past. It boggles my mind how much variety there is in the side activities and stories. But in a radical departure from the brawler-style gameplay the series is famous for, Yakuza 7 is a turn-based JRPG this time around. It didn't skip a beat when switching up genres, and this style of RPG fits the series like a glove. All of the basic JRPG tropes like enemy encounters, special attacks, multi-stage boss battles, and even fucking summons have been given the special Yakuza treatment. Grinding out turn-based battles in JRPGs is like comfort food for me, so I was delighted that this was the direction the series was taking. It isn't just shallow window dressing either. This is a game that clearly respects and loves the genre it's tackling, and the games that helped define its popularity. It doesn't go as hard with the references as Astros Playroom, but you'll find some pretty obvious nods to the giants like Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, and Persona. It even has Persona 5 music you can purchase and play in your hub bar. So, extra points from me. This is also the game that made me realize what I love most about this series. What I love the most about the Yakuza games are their sincere and immensely satisfying experiences of wish fulfillment. We all go through some ugly shit in our lives. Life isn't fair, and it can be quite demoralizing knowing that bastards at the top of the food chain like corrupt politicians, greedy businessmen, and violent criminals can get away with a lot of shit before their time is up. Even the games cast you as someone low on the social and economic ladder in the grand scheme of things, and have you face off against some truly despicable villains who stack the odds so heavily in their favor that defeating them feels like an impossibility. But it isn't. Through sheer determination, strong allies, and a ton of ass kicking, the good guys always prevail in these games, no matter the odds, and toppling the empires of the disgusting, morally bankrupt villains always feels fan-fucking-tastic. In the world of Yakuza, you can make a big difference, for the better. The series is famous for its wild shifts in tone and bizarre comedy, but I don't think it gets enough credit for how uplifting and inspiring it is. And during dark times like these, I think we need more games like that. So, in conclusion, Yakuza 7, my pick for 2020's Game of the Year. Alrighty, thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you like what you see, subscribe, let me know what your favorite games of 2020 were. And as always, I am Razorblade Mango. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all later. Bye.